The Longest Ring, a short story from When the Bells Stop Ringing by Danny Ballin. The darkness in Stockholm during December is not merely an absence of light, it is a physical weight. It arrives just after lunch, a heavy indigo blanket that smothers the city's archipelago, turning the Baltic Sea into a mirror of black glass. Astrid sat by her window in Östermalm, watching the reflection of the room hover in the glass against the night outside. It was December 13th, St. Lucia's Day. Down on the street she could see a small procession of children from the local choir. A girl in the lead wore a crown of electric candles in her hair, a white gown sashed in red, singing the old Italian melody that the Swedes had claimed as their own. Natten går tunga fjät. The night walks with heavy steps. It certainly did. On the windowsill in front of Astrid sat a single white stearin candle in a brass holder. It was burning steadily, the flame upright and unwavering in the draft-free apartment. It was a beacon. That is what she told herself. She was keeping a light in the window for Elias. It had been 2 years. 2 years of silence that had started with a sharp word over a Sunday roast, a criticism she hadn't meant to be so cutting, a defensive retort from him that hit too close to home, and had hardened into a glacier. The argument was so old now that Astrid had trouble remembering the exact syntax of the insults, but she remembered the feeling perfectly, the burning heat of pride. She was the mother, he was the son. By the ancient laws of family dynamics, he should come to her. He should apologize. So she waited. She placed the candle in the window every evening of Advent, a silent signal that she was here. "I am waiting," the flame said. "I am benevolent. I am ready to forgive you once you grovel." She took a sip of coffee. It was cold. Below, the Lucia procession moved on, their song fading into the traffic noise of Strandvagen. The silence rushed back into the apartment, louder than before. Astrid looked at the candle again. For the first time in 2 years, she really saw it. It wasn't a beacon. It was just a stick of wax. It was slowly consuming itself, melting down inch by inch, dripping onto the brass. It wasn't calling out to anyone. It was passive. It was immobile. It would burn until it had nothing left to give, and then it would sputter and die, leaving nothing but a scorch mark and a wisp of acrid smoke. Is that what I am doing? Burning myself down in silence, waiting to be noticed? The realization hit her with the force of the winter wind. Her pride wasn't strength. It was just fuel for a fire that warmed no one. Elias didn't know the candle was lit. He couldn't see it from his apartment in Södermalm. He couldn't feel her benevolent waiting. All he knew was that his mother hadn't called him in 730 days. Astrid's hand trembled. The room felt suddenly suffocating. The perfectly arranged cushions, the dusted bookshelves, the silent phone on the side table. It was all a monument to her own stubbornness. She stood up. Her knees popped, a sound of age that frightened her. She leaned over the windowsill and blew. Puff! The flame vanished. A thin ribbon of gray smoke curled up, smelling of extinguished hope. The window went dark. Astrid didn't turn on the lamp. She walked through the gloom to the side table. She picked up the phone. It was a heavy cordless landline. She had never gotten used to mobiles. She dialed the number. Her fingers remembered the pattern better than her mind remembered his face. 070. She pressed the green button and held the receiver to her ear. The silence before the connection was a void. Then the ringing began. Doot-toot, doot-toot. The Swedish ringtone is slow, methodical. The first ring was terrifying. It sounded like an accusation. Why now? Why not yesterday? The second ring was an eternity. In that 3-second gap between tones, Astrid lived a lifetime of worst-case scenarios. He wouldn't answer. He would see the number and decline. He had changed his number. He was dead. He was happy without her. Doot-toot, doot-toot. The third ring. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She almost hung up. The panic of rejection was rising, a bile in her throat. It was too late. She had waited too long. The candle had burned too low. She pulled the phone away from her ear, her thumb hovering over the red button to end the call, to retreat back into the safety of her pride. Click. The ringing stopped. The silence on the other end was different. It wasn't the void of the network. It was a living room. The sound of breath. "Mama?" The voice was deeper than she remembered. It was cautious, guarded, stripped of the anger she had replayed in her head for 2 years. It was just a young man, sounding surprised. Astrid closed her eyes. The tears came instantly, hot and fast, spilling over her cheeks. She gripped the phone with both hands, as if it were a lifeline thrown into the dark sea. She had to clear her throat twice before she could speak. She had to swallow the pride, which tasted like ash, to make room for the love. "Hey, Elias. It's St. Lucia. I just wanted to hear your voice." There was a pause, a hesitation, and then the sound of a guard being lowered. "I'm glad you called, Mama," he said softly. "I was just thinking about your saffron buns." Astrid let out a breath she felt she had been holding since that Sunday roast 2 years ago. The room was dark, the candle was out, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't cold. "Come over," she said, the words rushing out. "I have dough rising. Come over." The miracle was not that he answered. The miracle was that she had blown out the candle and picked up the phone.
A prayer for the space between us. Let us speak now to the silence that sits on the line. Let us speak to the pride that masquerades as strength, to the arguments we have memorized and the wounds we keep fresh, convinced that forgiveness is a surrender we cannot afford. We are the architects of the standoff. We are the ones who wait for the other to blink, to bend, to break, while the days turn into years and the distance between us grows into a country we no longer know how to cross. Let us confess the heavy truth to one another. We are not waiting for an apology. We are waiting for permission to love again. We tell ourselves we are teaching a lesson, but we are only teaching ourselves how to live without the people we need. We built monuments to our own rightness, cold and perfect, while the warmth of connection burns down to ash in the window. Let us ask for the courage to be the one who folds first, to realize that the first person to reach out is not the loser of the war, but the winner of the peace. To understand that pride is a poor companion on a dark night, and that being right is a cold comfort when the table is set for one. May we have the strength to blow out the candle of our own stubbornness, to stop waiting for a sign and start sending one, to pick up the receiver even when our hands are shaking, even when we are terrified of the silence on the other end. Let us learn the lesson of the ringing phone. The sound of connection is terrifying, but the sound of permanent silence is worse. The risk of rejection is real, but the risk of regret is absolute. So let us dial the number. Let us clear the throat that is tight with years of unsaid things. Let us say the simple, difficult words. I am here. I miss you. Come home. May we find that the bridge back to each other is shorter than we thought. And may we discover that love, when it is finally allowed to speak, does not care who was right. It only cares that we are together. The line is open. The heart is waiting. Make the call.
to start by saying that this story, The Longest Ring, is one of those rare narratives that doesn't just, tell you about an emotion. It makes you feel it physically.
Oh, absolutely.
For me, it was that specific, agonizing, and frankly, a highly recognizable weight.
Yes.
That crushing feeling of knowing you were wrong, or at least that you are suffering unnecessarily, but your pride has constructed this wall so thick that you can't see a way to dismantle it, not without losing face.
That's the brilliance of the opening, isn't it?
Yeah.
It immediately establishes that the emotional landscape is, well, it's inextricably linked to the physical environment.
It's a perfect mirror.
A perfect mirror. The way the story uses the sheer intensity of the Stockholm winter, that pervasive, heavy, almost viscous darkness, it acts as the perfect external reflection for Astrid's internal self-imposed isolation. You feel the cold outside reinforcing the coldness inside.
And what really struck me, beyond the gorgeous language, was just the sheer cost of that stubbornness. We're looking at 2 years.
2 years.
730 days of absolute silence, all stemming from what?
She can't even remember clearly anymore.
Exactly. The original offense is completely forgotten, but the need to be right, to maintain that moral high ground, becomes this enormous, seemingly insurmountable barrier.
And that's the universal ache the story captures so well, You feel that lost time. You recognize that toxic dynamic of family stubbornness where a relationship it transforms from something warm and fluid into something rigid and codified.
Rules.
And that is exactly why we need to dig into this story today. It is so much more than a simple narrative about a mother and son.
It is. It's almost like an instruction manual on how to break the silence.
We're going far beyond the plot points to explore the profound literary elements, the powerful symbolism of light and dark that really, it underpins the entire narrative.
And the spiritual meaning.
The universal, almost spiritual meaning of connection. It's particularly fitting for this season, I think, when the focus so often turns to home, reconciliation, and family. And as we move through this, we will absolutely pause to clarify some of the rich cultural context and perhaps less common vocabulary that truly anchors this beautiful story in Sweden. We have to begin with the setting, because truly, in this story, the setting is not merely a backdrop. It is a profound character. It dictates the mood and relentlessly intensifies Astrid's internal conflict.
That opening line alone sets an incredible, almost tactile tone.
It does. The darkness in Stockholm during December is not merely an absence of light. It is a physical weight.
A physical weight. I think we need to linger on that specific piece of figurative language. It's a metaphor, it's personification, and it's working overtime to tell us immediately that this story is going to be heavy. That this is about an intense emotional struggle, not just a physical location on a map. It's the kind of darkness that, it presses down on your chest. It makes it harder to breathe, harder to move.
Exactly. And the description continues, painting this incredibly evocative scene. The darkness, we're told, arrives just after lunch.
So early.
So early. And it's described as a heavy indigo blanket that smothers the city's unique geography. The Baltic Sea, which should be reflecting life and motion, is turned into a mirror of black glass.
And what do you see in a mirror of black glass?
You see yourself. That's it. These are images that are meticulously designed to amplify Astrid's solitude. When you look out at the world, at the sea, all you see is a reflection of your own room and your own isolation. It perfectly symbolizes her state of being.
Let's hit pause for a moment, as you said, for the learners among us, because the vocabulary here is so intentional and beautiful. First, that color, indigo.
Yes.
It's not just black or dark blue, it's a deep, rich color that sits somewhere between blue and violet. Using indigo for the blanket of darkness gives the color immense depth and weight. It's a purposeful choice to show the quality of the darkness.
It's luxurious in its depth, but also suffocating.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And then there's the geography itself, which is so vital to understanding Stockholm. The city is built around its archipelago.
Right, which for anyone unfamiliar is a cluster or a chain of islands.
And the darkness is specifically described as smothering this intricate geography. If you imagine an archipelago, it's a network of connection points, bridges, boats, passages between islands.
All these ways to get from one place to another.
Exactly. And the darkness covering it suggests this overwhelming force. Astrid's pride is just covering up all the natural ways to connect and move, all the complexity and life of the city.
That's a wonderful parallel. The environment itself is participating in the isolation. But the story also anchors itself to a very specific cultural moment, December 13th. St. Lucia's Day.
which, for those who haven't experienced it, is a major cultural celebration in Nordic countries. It's all about ushering in light during the deepest, darkest part of winter.
It's beautiful. It features processions of children dressed in white, singing, often led by a girl wearing a crown of actual lit candles, a symbol of light in the darkness.
And Astrid is watching this. Right outside her window, she sees the children's procession, the girl with the crown of light. And the story gives us a direct quote from the traditional song they sing,
Natten går tunga fjett.
which means the night walks with heavy steps.
The irony is just immediate and powerful. Astrid is living that heavy night. She is physically waiting for a light for Elias to call or appear, but she is surrounded by this cultural, communal celebration of light and shared tradition.
It just throws her self-imposed darkness into the sharpest possible relief. The light, the warmth, the connection, it is literally passing her by while she stays frozen inside her apartment.
And the moment that celebration passes is a structural key to the story. The song fades into the distant traffic, and then we get that critical detail. Silence rushes back, and it's described as being louder than before.
That's such a powerful articulation of solitude. For the isolated person, the return of silence after a brief moment of connection, like that passing procession, can feel more oppressive and louder than any actual noise. It's the sound of absence hitting you all over again.
And that return to silence brings us directly to the core conflict, which the story calls the Glacier of Pride.
2 years, 730 days. It's staggering, and all over a sharp word and a defensive retort at Sunday roast.
The initial argument is completely irrelevant now.
Yeah.
Astrid can barely remember the exact insults exchanged. What remains is only, as the story says, the burning heat of pride.
And then it gives us that magnificent metaphor, the conflict hardening into a glacier. We have to stop and explore why a glacier specifically is such a perfect literary choice here.
Absolutely. It's not just a block of ice, right?
Not at all.
Think about the specific connotations of a glacier. First, there's its scale and weight. It's immense. It suggests the burden of this 2-year conflict is just enormous.
And its immovability. A glacier is not something you just push out of the way. It suggests this separation has achieved geological stability. It feels permanent.
It feels permanent. And third, it's slow formation. It takes decades, even centuries, for a glacier to form. The story contrasts the speed of the original offense, a quick, sharp word, with the almost geological time it took for Astrid's pride to harden into this rigid, immovable mass.
That contrast, a quick insult versus 2 years of hardened silence, is just devastating. And Astrid's internal justification for maintaining this vast, cold barrier is chillingly relatable.
It is, she thinks. By the ancient laws of family dynamics, he should come to her.
Those ancient laws.
This is a crucial psychological insight that applies far beyond this story. It's the idea that we create these self-defeating, rigid laws in our relationships, often based on seniority or, perceived victimhood.
I'm the mother, he's the son, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Astrid believes the structure of the relationship dictates that Elias must make the first move, the first act of groveling. This is her self-defeating sense of moral superiority. It's a cold comfort that allows her to suffer while still feeling right.
And the setting reinforces that trap, doesn't it? The whole environment, the cold, the immobile Scandinavian winter, the smothering darkness, it all mirrors the rigid, immobile nature of her pride. The atmosphere reinforces the idea that nothing moves, nothing melts.
Unless she makes the first terrifying move. And what's fascinating is that we, the readers, we understand immediately that waiting for a glacier to melt on its own is a losing game. It requires effort, force, and time. And Astrid has wasted so much time, which is the most precious commodity of all.
This brings us to the centerpiece of her 2-year ritual and self-justification. The steer-in candle sitting rigidly on the windowsill.
The monument.
The monument, yes. Initially, Astrid has invested this simple object with immense symbolic power. She sees it as a beacon, a silent signal, and a tool for what she calls benevolent waiting.
Benevolent. I love that word choice.
The flame is upright and unwavering, a perfect reflection of her own seemingly strong, stubborn resolve.
It's the quintessential passive-aggressive act made physical. We get that pivotal quote that perfectly captures her silent ultimatum. I am waiting. I am ready to forgive you once you grovel.
That word grovel, it says everything.
It does. The little flame is doing the psychological work of 1,000 angry or demanding words. But it's silent. It allows Astrid to remain outwardly peaceful while internally maintaining a posture of moral superiority. She has carefully positioned herself as the patient victim waiting for the prodigal son to return to the light.
But the narrative makes a crucial, beautiful pivot, a true moment of self-discovery. After 2 years of maintaining this shrine of stubbornness, Astrid looks at the candle really for the first time.
The coffee is cold, the faint Lashir procession has faded to a memory, and the silence has returned, deafening.
And the brutal truth hits her with clarity.
This shift in perspective is the true emotional turning point of the story. She sees the brutal truth. It wasn't a beacon, it was just a stick of wax.
Just an object.
It's passive, it's immobile, it hasn't reached anyone. It's doing nothing except slowly destroying itself. And this is where that self-consuming metaphor takes center stage. And it's arguably the most important literary device in the whole story.
It's a devastating realization about self-martyrdom, isn't it? The candle is slowly consuming itself, burning down inch by inch, and when it's done, what will be left?
Nothing.
Nothing but a scorch mark and a wisp of acrid smoke. That scorch mark is the physical evidence of 2 years of useless waiting, 2 years of self-destruction masked as fortitude.
And that introspection leads to the central, agonizing question Astrid asks herself, a question I think the listener should be asking themselves too. Is that what I am doing? Burning myself down in silence, waiting to be noticed.
That realization is described with such vivid physical force. It hits her with the force of the winter wind. A sudden, undeniable blast of clarity after 2 years of carefully nurtured self-deception.
And the story delivers its crucial, defining line about the cost of pride right here. It's a line that should be, written down and contemplated.
What is it?
Her pride wasn't strength. It was just fuel for a fire that warmed no one.
Oh, that's it. That's the whole story in a sentence. It is self-immolation dressed up as moral fortitude. It looks strong and unwavering, like that upright flame, but it produces no warmth, no connection, and it only leads to ruin.
And we have to emphasize the practicality of this failure, connecting the symbolism back to the real world. The story gives us a critical geographical detail.
Right. Elias lives across the water in Södermalm.
He cannot possibly see the candle from his apartment. This proves definitively that the waiting, the beacon, the silent signal, it was entirely self-inflicted and meaningless to him. All he knew was the geography of isolation.
730 days of absolute silence from his mother.
That's all he knew.
The genius of that geographical detail is that it completely strips the candle of its purpose. The symbol wasn't for Elias. It was a prop in Astrid's own internal play. It allowed her to feel justified in her suffering and her passive aggression.
It was for her.
The moment she realizes that her suffering is entirely self-contained and invisible to the person she needs, the entire intellectual and emotional structure of her pride just collapses. It was never a signal, it was a distraction.
And that distraction has allowed the glacier to grow. But now the realization, fueled by the cold clarity of the Stockholm dark, forces a choice. Continue to burn down to ash in solitude, or risk the pain of action.
The narrative transition from that internal realization to external physical action is handled with exquisite, almost agonizing detail. It really emphasizes the monumental difficulty of this simple act. We see the immediate, unsettling physical fear. Astrid stands up and her knees pop.
Just a little sound.
A little sound, but it's described as a sound of age that frightened her.
This is a crucial moment for her character development. What's fascinating is how this small, unavoidable sound connects her spiritual stagnation, the pride that has frozen her for 2 years, to her physical, undeniable fragility.
Time is passing.
Time is passing and she is losing it. The sound of her aging body is the ultimate, non-negotiable alarm clock. If she doesn't act now, physical limitations will soon make the choice for her.
And she sees the physical manifestation of her state everywhere she looks. The house itself, the perfectly arranged cushions, the dusted bookshelves, the absolutely silent landline phone.
It's all a monument to her own stubbornness.
Perfect, pristine, and entirely dead. It's waiting for life, but only she can provide the spark.
So she commits the deliberate act that kills the ritual. She leans over the windowsill and she blows, and the flame vanishes. The action is so quick, almost underwhelming in its mechanics, but the spiritual impact is profound. It's the sound of her surrendering her rightness.
And we have to savor the sensory description that follows because it's the payoff for 2 years of literary buildup. The smoke curls up, smelling of extinguished hope.
Extinguished hope. Not just extinguished flame, it's a literal death of her proud weight. She has actively killed the ritual that allowed her to passively suffer. That scent of acrid smoke signifies the end of her self-deception.
And the next immediate terrifying action is to pick up the phone. And here, the story's intentionality shines again in the choice of technology.
Yes. A heavy, cordless landline. This isn't the fluidity and ephemeral nature of a modern mobile phone.
No.
This old technology emphasizes the weight, the concrete nature, and the difficulty of the action she is about to take.
I love that detail. A landline is rooted to the house. It requires deliberate physical effort to carry and dial. This is a solid, deliberate choice that she cannot easily undo.
Right. If she were using a mobile, the connection would feel fleeting. But with the heavy landline, the decision is deliberate, it's concrete, and it's rooted in her physical space. It forces her to fully own the act.
And the detail about dialing is so poignant. It emphasizes the depth of their relationship despite the silence. Her fingers, the text tells us, remember the number better than her mind remembers his face.
Ooh.
That muscle memory highlights the relationship's fundamental nature. The number is ingrained, automatic. Yet the visual memory of her son, the current reality of him, has faded under the weight of 2 years of mental absence. That contrasting ingrained habit versus fading image, that's the true painful cost of the 2 years.
She presses the green button.
And now we enter the story's namesake moment, the absolute peak of the drama, the ringing of the longest eternity.
And that silence immediately preceding the connection is terrifying. It's a void, an emotional vacuum before the auditory assault begins.
We need to analyze the soundscape of this call because the author uses sound to represent the internal psychological crisis perfectly.
Yes, the Swedish ringtone is described as slow, methodical. This slow, deliberate rhythm is crucial. It maximizes the time between rings, allowing for intense internal crisis and panic to unfold.
Right. If it were a fast, impatient ring, the drama would be diluted. This slow pace stretches 3 seconds into a lifetime.
Okay, so let's track her psychological journey through those 3 rings.
Let's do it. The first ring.
It's immediately terrifying. And the story characterizes it as an accusation. Why now?
Right. The moment the sound begins, all her careful self-justification and moral positioning just crumbles. It's replaced by the raw, exposed fear of scrutiny and change. She has broken her own law of silence.
Then the second ring. This is described as an eternity. Think about that 3-second gap. What happens in that tiny space of time? Everything. The story beautifully describes Astrid cycling through a lifetime of worst-case scenarios. He wouldn't answer, he would decline the call, he changed his number.
He was dead.
Or, worst of all, he was happy without her. The second ring, the longest eternity, is pure psychological torture. It forces her to confront the reality that she is now entirely dependent on his response.
And this is where that dynamic of phone anxiety intersects with the story's theme. I mean, for anyone who has ever made a high-stakes call after a long silence, that second ring is when the self-doubt just floods in.
It's the moment we realize we've risked the comfortable insulation of pride for the terrifying possibility of reconnection or rejection.
And then the third ring.
The physical manifestation of panic takes over completely. Her heart is hammering against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. The panic of rejection is rising up, a literal bile in her throat.
She feels the certainty of total failure. It was too late. She had waited too long. The glacier had won.
And we come to the absolute precipice, the moment of surrender. She almost hangs up. Her thumb hovers over the red button, ready to retreat back to the safety of her pride.
That is such a profound moment because it shows us how seductive pride is. It offers insulation from pain. Rejection is worse than silent suffering, and the red button offers instant familiar relief from vulnerability.
But she doesn't press it. The courage holds. And then the mechanical shift, the click, the cessation of the ring.
And it's the instant shift from the network void, the world of technology and distance, to a living silence.
The sound of room.
The sound of breath. This is the moment when technology finally bridges the gap back to humanity. She is now listening to Elias's reality, not just the network's pattern.
The duration of those rings, that eternity, is what makes the final connection so impactful. She has suffered the consequence of the 2 years in 30 seconds of ringing.
And the climax of that connection is defined by a single cautious word from the other end.
A word that cuts through all that tension like a physical blade.
We need to pay close attention to the description of Elias's voice. It's deeper than she remembered. Cautious, guarded, yes.
But crucially, it is stripped of the anger she had replayed in her head for 2 years.
That's the key. That is the immediate, powerful diffusing of the entire dramatic narrative Astrid had constructed to justify her silence. He wasn't waiting to deliver a defensive retort or a lecture.
He was just surprised, and maybe a little tentative.
And the response to that single word is purely visceral. The tears came instantly, hot and fast. Her body releases the tension of the past 2 years, proving that the body knows the truth even when the mind is armored by pride.
She grips the heavy phone like a lifeline. The physical reaction is the definitive proof that she made the right choice.
The narrative then gives us one of the most powerful, gut-wrenching details in the whole story. Before she can speak, she has to clear her throat. Twice.
She has to swallow the physical embodiment of the conflict, which the story describes as tasting like ash.
Like ash. That ash is the residue of the candle, the physical remains of her burnt-out pride. She swallows the taste of defeat and relief combined, creating room for love to emerge.
That image of swallowing the ash is the literary manifestation of humility. It's not just a dry throat. It's the physical act of consuming her own vanity.
And after that hard swallow, her simple, difficult words are just stunning in their vulnerability. She doesn't launch into an apology or an explanation.
No.
She just says, "Hey, Julius, I just wanted to hear your voice."
No excuses, no demands, just the raw need for connection. This vulnerability is the key that unlocks the 2 years of silence.
And the response from Elias is the immediate warm bridge back to normalcy,
I'm glad you called, Mama. I was just thinking about your saffron buns.
which is so significant beyond just mentioning a favorite food. We have to circle back to the context of St. Lucia's Day.
Right. Saffron buns, or lessicatter, are the highly traditional, bright yellow S-shaped pastries made specifically for St. Lucia.
By bringing up the saffron buns, Elias immediately references shared memory, tradition, and the current holiday context of light and home.
It's a genius piece of dialogue. Food acts as a nonverbal language of love and home. It bypasses the need for an immediate, painful verbal reckoning.
They don't have to talk about the argument.
They can talk about the buns. It's an instant, safe bridge back to being mother and son, rather than combatants in a silent war.
And that mention of food instantly warms the cold, dark setting we spent so long analyzing. Astrid lets out the breath she felt she'd been holding since that Sunday roast 2 years ago. The physical transformation is complete.
The candle is out. The room is still dark because of the Stockholm winter, but
She wasn't cold. She is warmed by connection, not by the false light of her own pride.
And this leads us to the moment of resolution, where the story gives us its central thesis in the concluding powerful quote. It's the ultimate statement on self-overcoming.
The miracle wasn't that he answered. The miracle was that she had blown out the candle and picked up the phone.
This line emphasizes the theme of agency. The external response, Elias answering, was out of her control. She had to risk it. But the true miracle, the spiritual victory, was conquering her own internal barrier.
The glacier.
The glacier. It was the deliberate, terrifying destruction of the monument to her own stubbornness. That is the triumph the story celebrates. The hardest person to forgive is often ourselves for being wrong, and the hardest action is often the simplest one.
After the narrative resolution of Astrid and Elias, the story performs this radical structural shift. It moves from the specific, intimate narrative of a mother and son to a universal spiritual contemplation, the prayer for the space between us.
It's a powerful literary device. It lists the story's moral lesson out of that singular context and applies it to every single relationship standoff we could ever encounter.
It's a universal summation, a guiding light. It addresses the core issues directly, naming the unseen enemy we all wrestle with.
It names the enemy, the silence that sits on the line, and the pride that masquerades as strength. It puts a name to that internal resistance we all feel when faced with the choice between connection and rightness.
And what's fascinating about this shift is how universally applicable the message becomes. While the story is set during St. Lucia's Day, a deeply rooted cultural and Christian holiday, the message of reconciliation and connection transcends any specific faith.
Absolutely. The prayer connects this fundamental human struggle to the broader holiday season because that time universally emphasizes reunion, warmth, home, and the importance of mending what is broken. The darkness of winter makes the light of connection all the more necessary.
The prayer includes a deep psychological insight that I believe resonates profoundly with everyone who has ever been in a relationship standoff. This is the crucial confession.
It's a truth bomb.
It is. We are not waiting for an apology. We're waiting for permission to love again.
That's it. We convince ourselves that we are holding a line, that we are principled, waiting for justice. But in reality, we're just waiting for the other person to dismantle the barrier so we can safely cross back over without losing face.
That line encapsulates the entire 2-year wait, not just for Astrid, but for countless people in silent standoffs.
And the prayer argues that this posture is devastating. It leads to a tragic consequence. We are only teaching ourselves how to live without the people we need.
The irony is just cruel. By waiting for permission, we condition ourselves to accept the absence of the very person we desperately want.
And it calls out the devastating physical manifestation of this pride by returning to the core symbols.
We build monuments to our own rightness, cold and perfect, while the warmth of connection burns down to ash in the window.
It brings the symbolism of Astrid's frozen house and the useless self-consuming candle back into the universal context, confirming that the story was always a metaphor for a global human struggle.
This leads to the profound redefinition of winning offered by the prayer, the courage to fold. It argues that the first person to reach out is not the loser of the war, which is how our ego frames it, but the winner of the peace.
And that's a complete inversion of how society and our own internal monologue typically views conflict resolution. Peace is the only victory that truly matters.
The story's moral is then delivered in these incredibly memorable, concise phrases. They are designed to stick with you. The prayer warns that pride is a poor companion on a dark night, and offers the brutal assessment that being right is a cold comfort when the table is set for one. These are the pithy summations that make the story such a powerful teaching tool.
And we must talk about the final lesson, the lesson of risk. The prayer fully acknowledges the terrifying fear of picking up that phone. The risk of rejection is absolutely real.
Elias could have hung up, he could have been cold or refused to acknowledge her.
He could have, but the prayer provides the necessary counterpoint. The risk of regret is absolute.
That distinction is everything. Rejection is temporary pain. Regret is permanent loss. That permanence of loss is the worst-case scenario we should truly fear, not the temporary sting of a cold shoulder. The glacier of silence will eventually become the regret of silence.
And so the final call to action is simple and direct, but terrifyingly difficult.
Make the call.
Make the call. The bridge back is often shorter than we imagine because the other person is often waiting, just as Elias was. The goal is togetherness, not vindication. The prayer concludes with that beautiful, ego-stripping thought. Love does not care who is right. It only cares that we are together.
That idea that love bypasses the need for vindication is the essential takeaway. It strips away the ego and focuses purely on the essential human need for warmth and contact. The story of Astrid and Elias, set against the indigo darkness of the Stockholm winter, is a masterclass in how small, personal decisions reflect universal spiritual battles during the darkest, coldest times of the year.
It's an urgent plea, really.
It is, a plea to blow out your own candle of pride before it consumes everything you cherish.
It truly reminds us that the only person keeping us isolated is often ourselves. The longest ring isn't the duration of the sound, it's the duration of the wait. The moment you act, the moment you decide to live vulnerably, the silence is broken and the warmth returns.
We hope you related to this story. If these moments of quiet connection and hope resonated with you, we're thrilled to tell you that the full collection, When the Bells Don't Ring by Danny Ballin, is now available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. Danny wrote this book to bring a little light to the quieter, sometimes harder moments of the season. It makes for a truly meaningful Christmas gift for anyone who loves literary fiction and heartwarming tales. You can find the link to buy or gift a copy right now in the description. Thank you for listening and for reading. We'll see you in the next episode. Never stop learning and hoping with English Plus Podcast.